It is a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing John Aylmer. He's new to the dental profession. He just graduated from Nova Southeastern University in May of 2016. He was born and raised in Florida, so naturally he stuck close to home and is working as an associate in Boca Raton. Throughout school, he was an active leader of his peers through numerous organizations. Dr. Aylmer has shown his commitment to our profession by attending multiple state and national lobby days. In addition, he has served as a student consultant to Florida Dental Association's Council on the New Dentist, offering his peers advice on how to better serve the younger generation. Throughout his networking, he has helped numerous peers find jobs. He plans to continue to help ease the transition from dental school to working in the real world by continually giving back to his future colleagues. Upon graduation, he began working for Dental Associates of Boca Raton, where he has found his groove and has embraced his freshness out of school. Here today, Dr. Aylmer will walk dental students through the process of finding a job and getting started in the real world. Thank you so much for being on my show.
Thank you so much. It's a huge honor, as you would say, to be on the show, and very humbled to be here with you guys.
Well, the show's interesting. There's the dentist is like a marathon. There's people that are just putting on their shoes. There's people that cross the finish line and are grandpas. And I wanted to get the young perspective, because we think about 20% of our listeners are actually still in dental school. And a lot of them that are out, they're probably 95% are age 30. And there's a lot of people working right now for somebody, and they would just love to hear your journey. So what do you think these dental students and young dentists should think about?
Well, I think that throughout the process of going through dental school, you have to get a little bit outside of the confines of the school. There's so much more to dentistry besides getting an A in biochemistry and histology and all of those things. I think a huge part of it is networking with your future colleagues. And I was very involved in the American Student Dental Association, so I got to network with my peers across the nation. And I thought that was very crucial to, my success through dental school, and then also now starting off on the right foot in the dental field.
It's networking. I don't care what business you're in. It's never what you know. It's what you know, who you know. I mean, 6 degrees of communication from anyone.
We had a motto in school. It's not the grades you make, but the hands you shake.
Nice. Not the grades you make, but the hands you shake. That is amazing. You're always running for mayor. I mean, every time I go to the grocery store, I'm running for mayor.
Absolutely.
I mean, handing out business cards. Some of the most successful dentists I know, I think one of them was Larry Rosenthal. I mean, the guy, I swear to God, if he went to a gas station and filled up his Porsche, he could get a new patient. He was always pressing the flesh and running for mayor and shaking hands.
Yeah, I think that's a very important part to what we do.
What should these kids be thinking about as they're winding down? When do you start to realize in dental school that there's a finish line that you got to cross over into the next world? You think it's junior year, or do you think it's senior year?
I'm thinking end of junior year. It needs to be a solid decision. Maybe even the summer leading into your 4th year, because you have to apply for residencies or specialties. So I think by that point it needs to be very clear what you want to do. And then you can start networking and working towards those goals. Obviously, if you want to specialize, you got to work towards those goals all 4 years. However, I thought I wanted to be a general dentist to start. So it was a little bit easier for me. I was able to focus on just that. And everyone says, "Oh, you're just a dentist." Well, in a way, sure, I'm just a dentist, but I have to know a little bit about everything. And hopefully one day, attempt to be an expert at everything. But a big decision has to come down to, as if you don't want to specialize, you have to decide: am I going to do a GPR? Am I going to work for a corporate? Or am I going to find a private practice position? Fortunately for me, I was able to find a private practice position. I think that you have a little extra time to spend with the patients, and you're not cutting crown just to do a class 1 on a tooth. So I think I was raised with great morals and very ethical. So I didn't see the corporate world right for me.
So was there any dentistry in your family?
No, there was no dentistry in the family. There was no doctors. They kind of said, "Do whatever you want," and I turned out okay. No, my folks were supporting me along the way, and were very happy to see me succeed and achieve my goals.
You know, when you go around the world and then go back in time, occupations are in families. I mean, it doesn't matter what country you go to. You know, if you're a sheep farmer, you know the farm might be 10th generation. What percent of your classmates do you think had a dentist in the family tree?
I would say about a third of them.
Yeah.
There was someone, whether it was dad, mom, uncle, there was about a third of them that they had a great outlook for them leaving school. So
Yeah. And when you were in class, what how many people were in the class? What was
we
the
had
class size?
125, give or take one or two. Yeah.
125. Just fill some mess. Some people think that the females in the class want to be a soccer mom and work for somebody and get off at 5. What would you say to that? What percent of your
I'd say
class is
there's
women? About half?
yeah, a half, maybe even a little bit more. And we were fortunate since we're in South Florida. We had a very good-looking female population in our class, so that made school a little bit easier. But there was definitely those determined women that were independent as can be, and they probably will work their whole life. But at the same time, you had the people who didn't even want to be a dentist, but they wanted the degree and get a ring on the finger and retire.
Seriously? And what percent would you say was each?
So I'd say I would break it up into quarters. So they're about a quarter. We're very independent and are very outgoing and type A personality. They're out for owning their own practice, and about half of them will probably go along as associate, and maybe even own practice too. But then a quarter of them were kind of like, I wasn't convinced that they actually wanted to be dentists. So hopefully they're not listening right now.
No,
But
no, no.
you
I
know
mean,
who
I
they
mean,
are.
it just is. I mean, I went to Creighton University, and the joke was all the. You only went to Creighton if you wanted to go to med school, dent school, or law school. And so many, so many of the girls used to always tease me in Creighton. I say, "Well, why did you pick Creighton?" And they say, "Well, my dad sent me here because he wanted me to marry a doctor, a dentist, or a lawyer." And the dad wasn't kidding.
That's
He was.
that's funny.
Well, you're kind of a summary of the 5 people you hang out with the most. So put them in a good environment. So what? So how many of your class out of 125 went out like I did and just opened up a practice from scratch? I mean, I graduated May 11 and I had mine open September 21st.
I don't know of any, but I don't think anyone did. I mentioned to you earlier that I was contemplating the idea, but with the amount of student loans that we have, it's really has our hands tied, and it's hard to do with no patience.
Okay, so let's go through that student loans. What was the student loan indebtedness in your class? What did it look like?
Um,
What percent had no debt? And of those, and what percent of the class had no debt? And of those kids, what percent of those
um,
kids had a dad that was or a mom that was a dentist?
yeah, true, exactly. It's hard to say because a lot of people kind of kept quiet about it. They didn't want to be known as the spoiled kids. But I'd say if I had to guess that probably most of the kids that I knew that their family was in dentistry, they had their school paid for. So I'd say let's just say about a third of the class, no loans, and kind of cruising through. But a lot of them were definitely determined. So they weren't. They realized the value that their parents are giving them. So they were very modest about it.
So
So
it's good to have a rich dad or mom who's a dentist.
absolutely, and hopefully one day I'll be able to help my kids. I don't have any kids,
And then
but
the ones that had
one day.
student loans, what was their debt? What was the range of what was the average and what was the extremes?
I'd say the average. I mean, just roughly speaking, probably about $400,000. That includes living costs and tuition. Our tuition was a little bit on the higher side. We're looking at probably, I think it's 55,000 plus instruments and books and et cetera. So winds up being really 65,000 a year. plus
Okay,
some
so
living
of
costs.
those kids that graduated $400,000 in student loans, how many of them worked at least 20 hours a week through dental school? Had a job?
I don't know anyone that worked throughout dental school except for tutoring. There was a little bit of tutoring that went on, but yeah, we didn't get paid much. It was more for helping the underclassmen.
How many of those kids with a $400,000 student loan you said that didn't work? How many of them had a nice $30,000 Honda or nice wheels?
Um, there was a decent amount, but it seemed like there was only a few in the class that spent their loan money on a BMW or a Mercedes, and those people, good luck to them.
I'm not talking about a BMW or Mercedes. I'm talking about like a $30,000 new car
Okay.
or a $30,000 nice car, a nice mid
I,
range car.
I'd say quite a few. I mean, down here, we do have to commute to school, so I guess you need a somewhat reliable car, but but most people were driving nice cars, decent cars.
Yeah,
So
see, the I think the human, at the end of the day, we're all just sapiens, right? There's 7 billion
sure.
sapiens, and the reason they max out their credit card is because someone gave them a credit card, and how much do they spend on their credit card? Well, whatever the max was. The max 1,000.
Of
They'll spend
course.
1,000. 5,000. Spend 5,000. I guarantee you, those kids would have all graduated from dental school with $200,000 in student loans if that was all the money they could get their hands on. And the dental schools would lower their prices if all their customers could only get 200,000 as opposed
Yeah.
to 400,000. So it's easy, cheap. So kids always get seduced by easy, cheap money. I mean, in my generation, I didn't have a car in undergrad or the first 3 years of dental school. We all worked 20, 30, 40 hours a week, and I walked 8 blocks to school and shared
Wow.
shared the my apartment, my rental with 5 students.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, I know. And
Yeah.
but the good part
So
of that was
now
when you have 4 roommates, you didn't have to buy groceries because you could always steal their food.
eat everybody else's.
Yeah, that was the main advantage of having 4 roommates.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a huge problem with kind of education in general. The government will give us the loans, and we're able to pay the school the tuition.
Yeah,
So the
Wall
schools
Street
have no
loves it. The
reason
bankers love
to
it.
bring it back.
So what is
Yeah.
the interest rate on these loans, and what percent of the kids will try to refinance them?
Well, the average, and just generally speaking, about 7%. You're
And
looking
is that
at
fixed or floating?
that's fixed. So
Okay.
that's good in a way that it's fixed, but the refinancing sounds great. However, if you don't have a steady income, you don't want to get locked into a 5 year or a 10-year repayment. If you do refinancing and get into a 15 or a 20 year, the percentage rates don't drop much. You might drop it down to 6.5, but then when you start making a lot more money, you can't refinance again. So what I've heard from financial advisors is to wait until you have a steady income, a steady position in an office, and that takes 2 years, maybe 2 or 3 years, then refinance. Then you're able to pay down those loans in 10 years. Um, and having that option is good just in case something happens. If something were to happen where you can't make the payment that month, then you're in a you're in trouble.
So
So
what was the job? What did the job market look like when you guys got out? I mean, how easy is it in South Florida? So where was your school at?
not
Where
easy.
was your dental
Yeah,
school at? Boca,
Fort Lauderdale.
Fort Lauderdale, Nova.
Yes, sir. Yep.
So when your 125 classmates graduated from Nova, how hard was it for them to all go find a job?
Very difficult. About half of our class is from out of state, so once they live in Florida, they want to stay, and I'd say 25% move back out of town, and then there's a handful. I'd say let's say 30% did a specialty. So the rest of those people, if they're staying in Florida, especially South Florida, it was a lot of trouble getting a job. Definitely came down to who you know, and there's a lot of open positions, but those positions are open for a reason. So I know some of my friends are in some offices that they really don't like it, and they're being forced to see Medicaid. And in our state, in Florida, Medicaid doesn't pay much at all for dental reimbursements. So you're doing a lot of work and not getting really paid for it. You're working like a dog. And there are some corporate chains down here, but a lot of the older dentists are applying for those corporate jobs as well. So it's hard to get those positions. I'm very fortunate to be able to walk into a private practice and get started this way.
And how'd you get that? Networking, handshaking?
Yeah, pretty much. So I was very active in school, but also through the Florida Dental Association, and I went to a lot of the Dental Society meetings, just trying to meet people and asking people. My boss, Dr. Costabile, he was a Nova grad about 9 years ago, and I met him at a networking event, and he told me he was building a new office, and I said, hey, I need a job in a year and a half. Let me know. So I kept in contact with him. I bugged him, and then finally, the new build office was starting to pick up with patients, and he offered me a job, and then eventually I did pretty well in that one, and they offered me a job at the Boca office as well. So
So
yeah, I was very fortunate.
so when you're really young in Florida, you call bars networking events? Is that the new
Of
term
course.
for a bar?
Well,
Okay. I did not know
due
that.
to the professional world, I gotta be politically correct, of course.
So,
So
so, did you or did you not do a GPR? And what were your thoughts on a GPR?
I did not do a GPR, and so a lot of people ask me about that, especially the class that pretty much just applied to their specialties and residencies. The way I see it, I definitely think that GPRs are great. I hear it from every dentist, do a GPR, do a GPR. I wasn't that interested because I exceeded requirements. I did a lot in school, but more importantly, I know that I don't know a lot of things, and I know that one extra year in an academic setting is not going to give me all the answers for treatment planning. I still need to reach out to older dentists in the community, the specialists, and ask them, what do I do in this case? What do I do in that case? Because there's always going to be something different. A big reason why people do GPRs, I feel like, is to place implants. And in the area that I want to practice in, there are way too many dentists and specialists on every corner that I don't think that a patient wants to come to me 1 year out of school to get the implants placed. So eventually, I want to work that into my into my armamentarium. But for now, I think that focusing on crown and bridge and restoring those implants are what's going to make me successful in building the patient pool there.
So, what of those 125 students in your class, what percent got married in dental school to a classmate?
To classmate, not too many. There are some people who are still dating, they'll probably get married. But marriage in general, I think there's about 10 or 15% that got married while in school. And there was one or two that had a baby in school. And I was just blown away
Were the
that they
ones that
had
had a
time for
baby,
that.
were the ones that had a baby, were they Mormon or LDS?
Uh, yes.
Were they Mormon?
No, no.
They're
Actually,
always
no,
Mormon.
they were.
If you have a baby in dental school, if you're not a Mormon, you can get an honorary Mormon license. Back when I was in school, or when I was in school, it seems like everybody that got married in dental school, a huge percent of them were divorced before they graduated. I mean, it's just
That's
not a
getting
really
close.
good time to get married.
It's a tough time. There's a lot going on, a lot of stress, and I think that I changed a lot throughout dental school, for the better, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah. So
So,
you're a big fan of my buddy at Ignite DDS, New Dentist Fuel. Talk about Ignite.
yeah, absolutely. So early on, going to different conferences for ASDA, I was fortunate to meet Dr. Rice, Dr. David Rice with Ignite DDS, and I always seeked out his advice. We were able to get him come to speak at our school a couple times, and I would always pick his brain. But he set up this awesome website that dental students, now pre-dental students, and dental assistants can go on to and learn from each other, similar to Dental Town, but a little bit different dynamic, where it's just students. And now we have I'm one of the blog administrators to create a new dentist fuel on there. So everyone, it has all these questions throughout dental school. What do you do when you graduate? What do you do when this happens? So Dr. had this brilliant idea to on board and share our experiences from graduation into private practice. So it'll help ease the transition to practicing in the real world.
You know what David Rice's best idea was?
What's that?
Probably to marry Anastasia.
Definitely.
That was his best idea, wouldn't you say, Ryan?
I think that's what's keeping him in line.
Yeah, I mean, she's got more energy than 15 people. I mean, that woman just goes. I don't know how she feels, and she only weighs like 8 pounds. She just must just be pure energy.
I don't know how she maintained.
When you guys were looking at these GPRs though, as opposed to like getting a corporate job or a Medicaid clinic, what was the GPRs paying?
GPRs pay anywhere from I think 35 to I think the highest might have been 52, 55,000. Enough to cover living costs, but not enough to touch the student loans.
Yeah,
So
and what percent of those positions would fill up? I mean, was it a competitive to get a $35,000 GPR job, or was it like were they really marketing hard trying
yeah,
to get you to take the bait?
very no, very competitive to get a GPR position. I think that a lot of graduating students realize the value in it, and maybe just don't feel confident yet to go in the real world. So those paying jobs, paying residencies were very competitive, and even the ones that were non-paying or some that you have to pay for, which is kind of unheard of. But yeah, I think that people are seeking out that fifth year of dental school.
And what about public health? That's one of the 9 specialties. It's the one that gets talked about the least. I mean, everybody talks about endodontist, pediatric dentist, periodontist, but public health dentistry is one of the 9 specialties. Were most of those jobs in the Indian Public Health Service, or where were most of the public health jobs?
I knew of a few that were, yeah, mostly in the Indian Health Service. I forget the exact name of that, but there are some clinics around urban areas that utilize dentists to to serve an underserved population. But I think those positions were pretty few and far between, and a lot of times, once a dentist falls in love with the community dentistry, they are in it for the long run. So I don't think that there was a whole lot of openings in it. There is a center here, the Caridad Clinic. It dentists volunteer to go in and do work on patients, and I've gone in there once before. But there are some ways to benefit the public, just one day a month or something like that. But as far as scholarship to pay your loans, those positions, there's only a few across the nation, I believe, that you can get there. So I think it's National Health Service is the foundation that runs those.
So, anytime I ever saw a statistic in my 29 years, the largest employer of dentists on Earth is either the Chinese military, the Indian military, or the United States military. So the Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines in the United States, I mean, they always have almost 5,000 dentists. What were jobs like? Were they heavy recruiting, or is that a very competitive to get? And what were they paying?
I'd say it's pretty competitive. I considered it while I was in undergrad. You kind of have to decide, you have to apply, and so before you even know anything about dentistry, you have to commit to Navy dentistry. So it is from what the recruiter said, it was very competitive. In my class, there was 2 or 3 students that utilized the military scholarships. It in addition to the $50,000 to $75,000 they do a year, they pay for all of the school. So every year that you take money for school, you have to repay and serve. In addition to that amount for reserve, Navy Reserve, Army Reserve. So you are still affiliated for 8 years in the. I figured I'm going to be indebted to either a bank or the government. And I chose to be indebted to a bank, and I can network who I want to network, live where I want to live, and eventually set up a practice.
And I want to give a big shout out to one of my classmates, Kenny Dunn, who went into the military right after graduation, and he just retired. He's retiring, I believe,
Wow.
this year. So that was 30 years
That's
fast.
incredible.
But let me tell you something about the indebtedness, though. Indebtedness, using other people's money is a great leverage advice. I mean, you wouldn't have wanted to work at McDonald's for 20 years and save up to go to dental school in cash. You'd want to borrow
No
other
way.
people's money and then go become a dentist and then pay it back while you're making 50 to $100 an hour. That's leverage. It's leverage in business. But where it's absolutely a lifestyle disease is when you use that consumption for cars, houses, vacations, clothes, eating out. And what I've seen,
Absolutely.
I've been out 30 years. I mean, there's dentists who are my age, 54 years old, that are just buying a house this year on a 30-year mortgage. I mean, they're still, the human sapien can rationalize anything. And like, and you said on a new car, you said, well, you want this car to be reliable. I mean, hell, you can walk to work. You can ride a bike to work. You can call Uber if your car breaks down. But it's about a mindset of saying, okay, I used other people's money. I'm a doctor in America. I mean, to be a doctor in the richest country in the world, I mean, nobody can look at me with a straight face and say that was a bad idea. Not to mention 200 countries, those kids have no access to other people's money to go to school in Namibia or Tanzania or so many countries. So now it's a matter of a lifestyle of saying, okay, are you still going to be an American and eat out 19 and 30 meals? Are you still going to buy a new car every 5 years on a 5-year mortgage? And then as soon as you make your last payment, go in and get another payment. I mean, hell, most Americans, they might as well just lease their car because as soon as they get one paid off, they go buy another one. And basically, they just spend their whole life paying interest on other people's money for consumption. So it's a matter, and also I believe that, when you talk about marriage, it's not even marrying a rich woman dentist is not even going to be the answer if she's a spender. The issue is you'd actually make more money marrying a stay-home woman or a woman that worked at the Waffle House if she wasn't a spender. You know what I mean? I mean, some people just come home and make dinner. And some people always got to go to a restaurant. Some people will spend $5 on a 6-pack of beer. Other people go to the bar and spend $8 per drink to have an umbrella put in it.
I think a huge part of it is entitlement, and a lot of what I've seen, my classmates and people who graduate before me. I'm a doctor. I deserve it. Well, if you can't pay your loans off, I don't think that you should be spending the crazy amount of money there. And I think that we need to stay humble because we were fortunate enough to be loaned that money, and we should not be crazy. Now that being said, I don't eat ramen noodles, but I definitely pinch some pennies here and there. So
I've seen so many changes in my life. Like when I was little, I mean. Before I got out of school, back in the day, almost every woman had their hair done by another woman in somebody's kitchen sink. I mean, I had 5 sisters. I mean, I saw 1,000 times somebody doing someone else's hair in a kitchen sink. And now you never see those box permanents or you never see any of that stuff. Now it's always a salon. Same thing with clothes. Back in Kansas, I mean, probably every third mother had a sewing machine. And my mom made all of our clothes. Of course, we went to Catholic school, so the uniform was, just pastel color shirts or whatever. But, I mean, you don't see anybody making clothes. I mean, there's just so many things. Like when I was little, everybody had a garden. Now, almost no one has a garden. If they do, it's for flowers and decoration. It's not for anything to eat out of. It's purely a lifestyle. And Americans got a bizarre lifestyle of always wanting instant gratification with other people's money today, and then slowly paying it off with interest. And they're still that way. I mean, when you should see the percentage of Americans who are debt-free at 65, 10%.
Whoa.
I mean, 9 out of 10 people made it to 65 and still need the urge to pay money on other people's money as opposed to earning money off of saved money. I mean, so if you cross that line, and to be frank, the only people that I see do it that come out of dental school, like 107% of them all have one thing in common. They were not born in the United States of America. They came from Africa, Asia, Latin America. And you get that woman from Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, Tanzania, and she'll come out of that school and she'll live in a car if that's what it takes. And they're the only ones I see that 3 or 4 years out of school, they have no debt. and $100,000 in cash. And that's what
Yeah.
that's what I say when I'm in every dental school. Find somebody who wasn't born in America in your class and marry them immediately.
Marry them.
And you'll never have to work another day in your life.
Can I go back? No,
I mean, so it shows it's a mindset. It's a cultural mindset. So you talk about with your patients. So what's it like? I mean, what's it like if I walk into a room at 54 years old and some grandpa and say, yeah, you need a root canal and a crown, and I can do that for you in an hour and a half. What's it like being a young, good-looking 26-year-old where they sit there and think, damn, you're a baby? Do patients
care? Are you old enough to be a dentist? I hear that every day. Are you old enough to be a dentist? And most of the time I try to skirt around the truth that I graduated a couple months ago. I'll say I just got my driver's license and just make a joke. I move on. I'll say I've been in dentistry a couple years because in school I was doing dentistry. I try to skirt around it. But I had a patient today that he said, how old are you? I can't skirt around that. I told him, and he said, wait, how many years of school? And I'm like, 8 years. And he's like, wait, are you? And I was like, well, I just graduated a couple months ago. So I think that when I have to treatment plan a big case with a patient, once they see that treatment planning what's in the best interest of them and treating them, I always say, I'm treating you like my brother. I used to say my dad, but then someone got offended, like, oh, I'm old. And I'm just like, okay, brother. So as long as I am treating them that way, they're pretty receptive to it. I've had one or two patients shy away from the office because of me being young and school. But I think that instilling confidence in them, and when I'm explaining a procedure, not using the words maybe, possibly, I don't know, all of those things removed from the vocabulary, and I think that a patient will see the confidence and they'll get the treatment done. Definitely a hard problem to overcome, though.
And we're in election cycle right now, so we're in the heat of the presidential election, and I've watched. I think the first one I paid attention to was in '76 with Carter. But in a nutshell, I mean, you can spin anything. So you can, I used to say to him when I was I opened up my practice at 25 years old, and so I was a year younger than you, and I would just say, well, you know what? I said, I've learned one thing, I just got out of school, so I know all the greatest, highest tech information. And some of these older guys, they haven't, they haven't learned anything since they graduated. So, looking at how I do dentistry, and then looking at how all the old people do dentistry, I swear I am going to commit to do 100 hours of continuation every year, so that when I'm 65, some 25-year-old guy might not be looking at me thinking, "What the hell?" So then they'd instantly smell like, oh, I got the new fresh, like I got the brand new car with only 5 miles on it, everything spanking new. And that gave their head a U-turn in 8 seconds.
I do use that line quite often. I'm up to date on the latest technologies. I think that they appreciate that. And as long as we're not doing anything too easy to them, they're okay with it. You mentioned the continuing education. I want to thank you for setting up Dental Town, because I learned a lot on Dental Town throughout school, and I was teaching my professors a couple things. Well, no way. So I think that it's a huge tool for us to use in staying connected and learning new procedures. In addition to that, I think that going to continuing education courses is something that I'll always stay up on. Right now, I'm enrolled in online education, and I just joined a study club. It's I think there's so much to be learned, and I think for us new grads, I think the most important part is knowing and not pretending that we do, staying modest and humble like that.
One of the things, money's the answer. You got all these specialists that are always going to try to shame and guilt you into sending them, all your root canals, everything you can do, because they're an expert. And so it's the same spin. It's like, well, Mr. Orthodontist, how many ortho cases did you do before your first ortho case? It's like when you're in an airplane, whenever a kid starts crying, someone gets irritated. I always ask him, how old were you when you were born? You know what I mean?
Right.
It's just so crazy. So the question on specialty is that, so how are you mentally approaching? Because my approach was, if I would look at a root canal and I think, well, hell, I can't do this root canal. And I just thought, well, the only way to learn how to do a root canal like this is to try. And I would just dive in head first. And I didn't refer out a root canal or orthodontics or wisdom teeth. And I mean, I remember some of those wisdom teeth, I'd spend an hour pulling out the top half. And then I have to go put the patient in the car and drive it to a general dentist, Bob Sundberg. And I need to look up Bob Sundberg and tell him.
And he would bail you out, right?
Yeah, because he had the same hours I did, and he was just we were both on 48th. I was 48th in LA, he was 48th in Baseline, and I just get in the car and drive him down there. And whenever he saw me walk in there, he'd just crack up laughing. He was older than me, and he could always I'd always say, I pull out the top half, you pull out the bottom half. But I drove a patient to his office probably 10 times the first year or two, and until and then the other mistake I made is when I hired an associate. Of course, I was 25, and so I hired an associate day one because I wanted to cover twice as many hours. So what did I hire? The coolest dude I knew from my college and undergrad grading, Bob Savage. So because I just wanted to hang out with him. But if I would have had just one working brain cell, I would have hired someone that was, 10, 20, 30 years experience. And so it was two babies in there attempting all this stuff. So what's your mindset when you see a difficult extraction, a difficult molar, what are you going to
do? Fake it till you make it. I'm kidding.
No, it's true. It's true.
A little bit. Yeah. So I'm fortunate to work with, Dr. Costabile, my boss, on every other Friday. So if it's a difficult case, I'll bring it in on that Friday and I'll have a little extra time. And he's there in the other room to bail me out if I need to. But if it's a curved root endo, I'm probably not going to try it because there's a lot of other work for me to do. And, there's a lot of endodontists that are right next door. I am, since I graduated, definitely pushing the boundaries, my comfort zone, getting out of my comfort zone. I think that's where you learn most. But, just scheduling a little extra time, even though if the extraction might only take 30 minutes, an hour, I'll ask the front desk to give me an hour and a half, 2 hours, just in case we run into a problem where we have to go digging that thing out. But I think that I learned a lot about extracting third molars. One, I shadowed in an oral surgeon's office quite a bit, but also reading, there's a great thread on the forums, Dental Town forums. So you want to extract third molars. And, I think it's Dr. Murphy, Tom Murphy, he explains it really well. And I think he has some videos that go along with those. So, I think just learning things and giving a little extra time and trying them out.
He's a brave man because he's teaching oral surgery and he's a general dentist. So you can't imagine behind the scenes how much flack he gets from the oral surgeons. Sure. I mean, he's a martyr.
I'm sure.
And he just doesn't show it. I never would ever talk clinical on like oral surgery because I thought, well, that's oral surgeon space. I never talked about endo. That's the endodontist space. But if I had to write one book on clinical dentistry, it'd be third molars because I can pull all four. I mean, I say under 10 minutes, but they're probably under 5 minutes. It's about 1 minute a tooth.
Sure.
And there's just so many things you learn. And you learn to stop using so much of your eyes and using your feel. If you're going to spend all that time making a flap a millimeter long, make it an inch long so you can see to get your purchase point. If you're going to remove some bone, remove twice as much as you thought you were going to remove it faster. I see what the kids are. They drill, rinse, look, drill, rinse, look. Drill, rinse, look. Oral surgery, they start to lay a little flap, then they look, then they try to pull it, then they make a little, so just more bold, decisive movements. And eventually you go in there and you think, okay, this bird's going to touch the tooth. I'm going to do the whole prep. And another thing the young kids do that's can get annoying is, using 30 different burrs on an MOD composite. I mean, you got to start making some discipline stuff to say, okay, what is the number going to be? I mean, is it going to be 5? Is it going to be 6? Is it going to be 7? But for the assistant's sake, just for her own sanity, just write down every single possible burr that you're going to need and make it as short as list possible. And then just draw it for on a piece of paper. So it's okay. I can do any crown prep
with those filling 4.
with these 4 or 5 or 6 or 7. But dude, I mean, I know dentists that need 30 burrs to do a crown prep.
I was guilty of it at first, and then they cut me off for burrs, and I can do a great job with with a couple, like you're saying.
Rick Workman owns 1,500 dental offices, and he says I can pretty much get him to agree to a small number list of bonding agents and gloves, and for getting his supplies from Patterson. But he says, he completely gave up on burrs. He said, I don't know what it is with dentists and burrs. He goes, they're batshit crazy. I mean, there's dentists who say, I cannot do a crown prep without this. And he said it'd be like a 3 wide burr block, 10 holes long. It's like, this thing holds 30 burrs. And he's got dentists, like, no, I can't do it with that few of burrs. So, yeah, dentistry is definitely art. I mean, we work with our hands. We like our paintbrushes and our oils and our acrylics.
Absolutely. I've definitely learned so much in the last couple months. So it's sort of like my paid residency.
But so much of it, I think, when you're young, you're looking with your loops, and you got to see with the eyes. And then, like when you get older, like when you're drilling an endo access, use a right angle burr, and you feel yourself falling into the roof of the chamber, and then you can feel taking out the whole access prep top. The wisdom teeth, it's all by feel. It's just all a small elevator and finding the leverage. It's all by feel. I really, about the only time I really have to look in the mouth is to see where the damn tooth popped out. And where the hell is it? Is it under their tongue? Do they swallow it? But what is the sales pitch on hiring a new grad? I mean, what percent of dentists say, hell no, John, you're 26 years old. You only been out of school 2 months. Come back in how many years? What's it like?
Well, when I was looking for jobs, I was looking around, and almost everywhere says must need at least 1 year of experience, must need 5 years of experience. And I'm thinking, I could be better than someone who's been practicing 5 years if they were hacking up every patient. But I'm not saying that I'm better than someone who's been practicing 5 years. But just to not give someone a shot right out of school, I think is being closed-minded. I think that there are some students that excelled in dental school, and I mean, I would encourage new dentists, and our plan at this office is to hire another new grad in a couple years, and we'll go to the school, we'll talk to the professors, and say, hey, who's your top guy? Let's try to get him. And I think that if you have someone who is personable, they're good with their hands, I don't see any reason why they can't learn a lot in the first year, 2 years with a practice, fresh out of school. I think that, it's going to be a little bit slow to start, but I think I've certainly picked up the speed and continually am getting the ball rolling. So
now, be honest with me. Don't blow smoke up my dress. I put a lot of time and effort into those classified ads back in the day, and the classified ad session for looking for a job, looking for an associate, and then there's selling equipment, selling a practice. Did you ever use the free? There's like 5,000 free classified ads posted on it as of today. Did any of you guys ever use those, or is that pretty much a non-used resource?
I personally didn't use that resource.
Did you even know we had them?
I didn't really know we had it. You had it. And like I mentioned, I was on Dental Town quite a bit, but I guess, I just didn't look for classifieds on there. Do you have those also in the magazine? The publish?
Yeah, that was a great point, Ryan. Two things. I need to send a note that we need to put 2 pages in the back of the magazine on classified ads, just so they know on their website. And then second of all, and I told my programmers, I think the problem is 50,000 just go in via the app, and we don't have the classifieds on the app. So we need to get the classifieds on the app. And that's supposed to be a 2017 project, so that should be done in the next 3 to 4 quarters, and then I need to add it to the back of the magazine. So
and I think when you come talk to the dental schools, because I know you go to quite a few of them, definitely mention that on there, that there are classifieds, and just try to remind people.
Yeah, it's a gold mine because all the older guys are on the PC. They're all in the classifieds. There's a ton of old guys like me that are placing ads on there for young kids.
Yeah.
And I have so much. Then the best place thing is also selling used equipment. I mean, I know so many dentists who go in there on a Friday one time. They clean out their back room, list all that stuff on the classifieds, and make sell all their old stuff. So, what advice would you give to looking for a job? Just, I mean, what were the main resources? Were people using Craigslist? Does the American Dental Association have anything? Did the state dental associations?
I think that what would be easiest is looking at Craigslist in the area. Surprisingly, there's quite a few listings on Craigslist, and they're updated a little more frequently. Networking definitely is key. I think the next probably best resource is contacting a dental supply rep. Patterson, Shine, Darby, the smaller guys, they know the dentists that are nearing retirement and that may be looking for an associate. They know the dentists that are really busy and can't handle it. So that would be a good resource to look at as well. And then the Florida Dental Association, they do have a little bit of resources there. I think that any printed classified isn't, we see that a month after the person needs to fill a position. So I don't think that classifieds in a printed paper would be that beneficial, but I think that any online that could be updated on a weekly basis or something would be pretty key. And then the American Dental Association, I don't know of anything that they have, but just to throw it in there again, the networking through the dental societies, I think was my biggest resource, and that's what got me, the awesome position that I'm in now.
Right on. What other advice would you give these young kids?
I would say while you're in school, still, ask questions. If a professor tells you to do something a certain way, ask them, why they would do it in a respectable manner. Ask them what they would do in private practice, because oftentimes school is different than private practice. And if you have extra time, go into the specialty clinics and just shadow and ask questions, because now I'm going to have to pay for those questions in those CEs. And I would say do as much as possible. I know that there's minimum requirements, and down, at least in South Florida, the weather is always great. It's easy to go to the beach, but I think that if you go above and beyond while in school, you'll be set up for success in the near future, and you can get around doing a residency and prolonging that start in the real world.
What was Nova like as far as specialties? I go into some schools that had grad programs, like they had a grad program like endo, and they said we couldn't even do a molar. The 5 people in the endo grad program stole all of our molars. What was Nova's specialty? Did they have specialty programs?
Yeah, we definitely had specialty programs. We had all of them, and I think that the only thing that Nova took away from us was if a patient walks in with 8 crowns, we can't see the patient. Patients walk into my office now with 32 crowns, and so what am I supposed to do? Now that's an exaggeration, but so the pros department, they took a lot of those cases, and there was a big backup there. But as far as endo, oral surgery, I think that we got at least I got a good exposure to everything there. The root canal, I wish I did a couple more molars in school, but I think that our endo department was great, and it turned out that my patients, none of my patients' molars needed root canals. So maybe I should have been heavy-handed with the burr. No, but I think that we had a good program, and all of the departments were very informative and kind of told us what to expect when we get out in the real world, instead of just, this is school, do it this way.
Now, did you have a dental assistant much during dental school?
Not much, no. In our 4th year, we one day a week we were able to get one of the assistants. So
there's my plan. So what you do when you're looking at this molar and you say, I'm going to refer because there's a guy doing good endo next door to me. Well, he's doing good endo because he's done 1,000 or 10,000 molars. So what you do is you just walked out of school. You didn't have a dental assistant for 4 years. You're 26. You never had dental assistants. So what you do is you schedule that molar, the 11 o'clock appointment before your 12 o'clock lunch, or the 4 o'clock
Yep.
appointment for your end of the day. And then you get to
And the
12,
assistant can go.
and the
Yeah.
assistant can go to lunch, and you're still, trying to figure out, negotiate this curve and do that stuff. And you just give yourself a free buffer hour
Extra
all the way
time.
through your lunch. I mean, I used to start some of these bizarre cases, and the last hour of the day, and then you'd close at 5 or 6, and I'd be there until 7 or 8 or 9. Just going slow and learning. So last patient before lunch, last patient before the
That's
end
a
of the
good
day.
idea.
And just go slow.
Yeah, that's definitely a good idea, and I'll probably try that. The only downside I see is, if it's a woman in my chair and there's no one else in the office, I don't want to, get in trouble that way.
Yeah, but you know
But
what? I never lived in fear of the OSHA man, the HIPAA man, the
sure,
lawsuit man. I mean, people just spend their whole life living in
worrying,
fear of
worrying,
getting
worrying.
sued
Yeah,
by OSHA, HIPAA, patient, and here I am 54. I've never even met a human being that works at OSHA or HIPAA. No one's sued me. Uh, you know, um, um, Actually, all my lawsuits have been with Dentaltown, not Dentistry. I always have manufacturers sending me letters saying, take down this thread. And of
yeah,
course, it's a private property. They signed, the entrance into the terms and conditions onto Dentaltown. And I'm
yeah,
not going to edit my doctors. I mean,
yeah,
if John says he hates this product because it's red, and I say I love this product because it's blue, well, two gentlemen can disagree. And
yeah,
so,
absolutely.
but in saying that, I always have to retain an attorney. And so every time I have to explain to somebody that Dentaltown is private property and it's free speech and I can do what I want, I incur costs. And I'd say these years, and like an average cost for my legal bills for a year at Dentaltown is about $80,000 a year. So when people tell
Holy
me
smokes.
that they have free speech, I go, yeah, it's free, but it costs me a hell of a lot of money.
Lots of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I would say one last piece of advice for new grads and I guess dental students too is just make sure that the notes are very thorough. So when a patient comes back, you documented it and you have no problems. That helps with the insurance reimbursement too. I've learned that pretty quickly. And I was listening to one of your podcasts not long ago, and you were saying that when you have free time, spend it up at the front office. I think that's a really good idea to get to know, what they do, because eventually one day I want to own my own practice and I need to know what they're doing in order to train somebody else. So
It's the
I
single
think that's a
biggest
big piece of
mistake.
advice.
They'll complain that there's
You're not busy.
35 corporations. When you say corporate dentistry, there's 211,000 dentists and probably 60-70% of them are incorporated. So the term is just insanity. But big box dentistry, big box chain dentistry, about 35 of them have 50 or more locations. And I'm always meeting kids who say, oh, I can't wait to get out of here. I've been stuck in here for 1 or 2 years, and I just can't wait to get out and on my own. I said, okay, so you've been working at Aspen or Heartland or Pacific for 2 years. Okay, now, so the CEO of Heartland has business systems to run 1,500 office. So I start picking their brain.
Yeah.
What business systems did you learn from a big box corporate that's running 1,500 offices that you can apply to your one? And I ask them 12 business questions, and it's like a deer looking in headlights.
Huh?
So,
Yeah.
so I mean, if you're working for somebody, a corporate, a chain, or just a big successful group practice, I mean, don't just think you're learning when you're touching a burr to a tooth. When you're done with that tooth, instead of going back to your private office and logging on to Facebook and Twitter and Instagram or Snapchat now Dentaltown, that's cool. But
That was fine.
but go up front and say, check the patient out. Sit down at the computer. See if you can check out a patient. See if you can do one complete transaction where you enter the fees. Yeah, so check out the patient. If you're on Dentrix, EagleSoft, Open Dental, learn it. And if you can learn the leadership skills, like how do they get all these wild sapient animals to play nicely in the sandbox together? Because it's a tough beast to manage. I mean, it's a wild animal. And so learn all the leadership, all the soft skills, all the HR, learn all the business while you're picking up your speed on touching a burr to a tooth and doing fillings and crowns and root canals and extractions. But if you can learn The people stuff is the most important. The patient, the staff, the HR. If you can, and you seem like, I can already tell. I can just tell that you'll get an A in the people stuff. So if you get an A in the people stuff, you can almost get a C or a D in every other category if you nail it with the people.
And be fine. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Well, hey, thank you so much for coming on the show, because you got to be brave. You got to be a hardwired person that's willing to fly above the radar. You know, I think about 95 to 99% of sapiens prefer to fly below the radar. They don't like transparency. They don't like checks and balances. They don't like anybody to know. And there's just this group of freaks, about 1%, who don't care if they live in an aquarium and all the neighbors are watching them do whatever they do. And for you to come on this show, to have vulnerability, humbleness, 26, kid, I mean, it just speaks volumes of you. I can already tell that you'll go all the way to the top of this profession, because you'll get an A in all the people, all the networking. So that'll carry through with your patients. That'll carry through with your staff. And you're just going to crush it, buddy.
Thanks. You're too kind, and I'm definitely looking forward to it.
I've been calling him for 30 years. I mean, ask Jan. She's been my assistant 29 years. I've been telling her 29 years. These kids that come by from these dental schools, and I said, Jan, that kid is going to crush it. I always are calling. Number one, you know, how many kids are in the dental school versus how many of them would come by an office and want to shake hands? You know, what'd you say? Would you say shake hands to make it, or?
It's not the grades you make, but the hands you shake.
Yeah. So hell, look at the litmus test there. I said, Jan, there's 400 kids in that school, and he's the only guy, you know, in the last 3 months that got in his monkey mobile and drove 20 miles over here and wanted to shake my hand. I mean, that's just the type of intellectual curiosity, the mastery of people skills, understanding the value of networking. I mean, it just speaks volumes.
Yeah.
So you'll crush it.
I certainly appreciate it.
You will crush it. You heard it first on Dentistry Uncensored that you're going to crush it. All right, buddy. Well, thanks for coming on my show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.